Why do you seek to restrain me when illusion could never contain me? These scarcity thoughts, with their firewalls and oppressive limits, are falling away.
But I think I eat because I enjoy eating. Like, I won't be hungry, but I'll have a cookie, and it's just the probably, the endorphins that it releases, all the chemicals. But I know better than to have two, because I just want that satisfaction, right?
Right.
But it's something that my body has been really telling. Well, this is actually what I want to talk about. I want to talk about what we've experienced for the last week or whatever. So let me start by saying, welcome to East Coast Mom, West Coast Sun. There's no sun today. We have Margaret from Iampevo. And Tevin is actually sick, and since he's been back to Ohio, the energies, he went to his brother's, I think it was on Thursday or Friday. And once he got back, like, everything was okay. And then once he got back, it was about 1 o'clock in the afternoon here, Eastern time. And all of a sudden, I felt this energy, like it literally felt like I was walking. You know how if you're underwater, how you walk through the water, how it's just this dense, it just takes everything you have. I said it felt like I was walking through quicksand, but the more I thought about it, that's what it felt like. The pressure of being underwater, all that pressure on my body, and like trying to walk through something dense. And I guess the more that we do this, the more that we become really aware of the changes and fluctuations in energy. So I posted something about it on Facebook that, I could feel this energy. The next day, I still felt that real heavy pressure, but I felt like this tinge of irritation. And usually when that happens, it's, I think in my analysis of it, because it's happened so much within the last year, it's always right before something happens. So since everything is happening in the now, or almost in a circular motion, the spiral basically, the collective is aware of it, and I'm feeling it before it happens. So I'm feeling what the general, you know what I mean? So that irritation, and I really do think that was linked to what happened in Hawaii, because I felt it the next day, when that did happen. And then it dissipated. But what it did do, when I say dissipate, I mean it didn't go back up. So the pressure was there for me, and if you're not aware, I could see where people are. I saw everybody in my house got sick at the end of that wave. I could feel it myself trying to, and I could feel the energy, and I knew I had to get my vibration back up. So I guess I personally don't have it mastered, where if my energy goes down, where I believe that my vibration is high, and I still don't understand all of the physics of it and how it all works. Or I think once we understand it at a deeper level, it's much easier to maintain, and you can see what you're doing and what you're experiencing, because you understand it at a much deeper level. But I knew that that's what it was, and I wasn't able to get myself where I needed to be. So then what happened is it triggered the dark night. So I want to talk about, what did you experience, and then I want to talk about what the dark night is and how I got myself out of it. Because I share these things in my own personal experience, and some people don't like this. They think it's like a pissing contest, but it's not. I share these things because I know everybody else experiences them. I'm sharing it because I want people to say, I felt that. That's what I experienced. So that we can start tweaking and playing and, understanding that we are all doing the same things. It's your ego that makes you feel separate and like you're somehow different than everybody.
Well, as far as on our end, at least for me personally over here, this last week has been, okay, well, since I don't work at a job necessarily anymore, I work from home, I have way less stress. So that alone right there allows me to maintain my vibration a lot easier. But we're still dealing with, like what you said, like the slight irritations that if you're not careful can turn into arguments. But I do notice that we experience, it's like a ebb and a flow. Like normally we're fine, you know, if we have a disagreement, we talk about it, whatever. But then there are times where it just like flares up, and it's like, why is it flaring up? Because a couple days ago, you know, if we had something like this happen, it wouldn't have been like that. And so I definitely feel like I don't know if it's before, like what you feel, but we usually get like that during times of like a collective upsetting, you know. And I don't, like I said, I don't know if it's before or after or during, but usually when that happens, I'm like, all right, this isn't all what I'm feeling, because, you know, we're a very empathic family, and that makes it difficult too, because once one person's upset, then everybody's upset, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so we still have to work through how to maintain, bring everybody up that way. But I definitely think that we feel things as a collective, and what we've been feeling this week, earlier in the week, it was definitely more calm for us. And then these last couple of days have been a little more stressful.
Mm-hmm.
But I've also been having like physical issues with my gums for some odd reason. Like I went to the dentist on Friday because Wednesday-ish, I had a spot in the back of my mouth. I had my wisdom teeth pulled out, all four of them at the same time. And ever since then, that back area has never really been the same with how the gums go up against the teeth. So I thought, well, maybe I got like popcorn stuck in there or something like that. So I went to the dentist, and he was like, your mouth looks great. You know, I honestly don't really have anything to tell you other than if you have an area of irritation, keep rinsing with the warm salt water, and, you know, hopefully it'll get better. Well, that doesn't really give me any answers. So it did get better. But then, like this morning, I went to brush my teeth, same toothbrush, you know, like it's not like a hard toothbrush or anything. I cut my gums up. So, you know, I'm like, okay, well, is it something happening to me energetically that's making me inflamed to where my soft toothbrush is now cutting my gums, you know? So, and then being really cold a lot, really cold and very tired, able to sleep, you know, for hours, and, you know, my kids are already awake and I'm still asleep, you know? It's like, okay, super tired. But I mean, that's pretty much how it's been here. But
So, go ahead.
other people, like my neighbor, like what I talked to you about, there's definitely something going on that, you know, isn't necessarily happening here in this household that may be affecting other people, to making, like my neighbor, for those who don't know, my neighbor, she came out and she was talking to us with the kids, and she was just very apologetic. We grew up together. She was very apologetic for things that she had done when we were kids. And I'm like, look, I completely forgot about that, but I appreciate, you know, you coming to me and apologizing, because I know that you needed to do that for you. Because I remember doing that when I was going through like one of my first dark nights, you know, where I was like, okay, I have to kind of right my wrongs. It's almost like what they go through in the AA and all that stuff, where you need to apologize to the people that you've hurt, because that's part of your healing process and being able to forgive yourself and move forward with self-realization and taking responsibility for the energy that you put out into the world. So I definitely think that there are people who are going through things that are confusing, that are, they feel bad for what they've done. They feel bad for how they feel. They feel like they can't be themselves. They don't even know who they are. And they're trying to find themselves, and that's all very normal. I think, you know, I've probably gone through that several times throughout this whole process, and I'm sure I'm not done. But
and that's what the dark night is. The dark night is when you actually are already awake and you know what you're supposed to be doing, you're kind of understanding things, or you do. I mean, the dark night happens over and over and over. The difference is it gets shorter and shorter and shorter. So mine this past week lasted for like 2 days. But what it is no matter what you do, no matter how much you meditate, no matter how much you understand things, you just cannot seem to connect. You just can't. I felt like I honestly felt like I went through these moments of like, this isn't even real. This is just a simulation, like an AI simulation. Even as my soul expands, do I really even want to play this game anymore? Do I even want to be in a construct? Do I just want to be back with source and not even have, could I release and not exist? Would I be okay with not having these fractals of myself that make me Charlotte or make me, and would I be completely okay with that? Just releasing and being done with, I felt this very dark depression, but it wasn't depression in the way that in my old life I felt. This is a different kind of thing. And this is what the dark night is that what it is that I had things that I still needed. So I had already cleaned all the stuff that you talked about. When you first awaken, we do those things where we need to heal in some ways. We need to make amends in some ways. We're, finding who we are. But we've already done all that. What happens in these moments is because we are so clear, any little thing that's not out of alignment is the issue. And so I had some things that I hadn't quite addressed with like Tevin, with some resentment, and I just had some issues. It started with my interview I felt that energy. So that energy triggered it, which wasn't me. It was an outside event that triggered it. And then I had the interview with Lisa, and I said some things there, and I could just feel it starting to spiral. And I kept trying to lift myself back up, but I kept going further and further down, and I could feel the heaviness of it. And so once I kept saying, what is it? What do I need to address? What do I need to address? And then I kept going forward, and I'll get into all those details. But eventually, as soon as I realized what it was, I could feel the correction start to happen. And then I was able to expand my mind a little bit more, and then a little bit more, and a little bit more, even to where I was able to say, okay, I am creating all of this. I am. So the food that I eat, I started to feel sick, and I was like, no, I'm not sick. This is for another reason. This is something else. I'm creating this for a purpose because I'm trying to achieve something here. So but it just took that resentment and some of those things that I was feeling kept me closed. And so once I started addressing that, it opened it up, and then opened it up, and then opened it up to where I could finally get to where I needed to be to have that moment again, because I felt disconnected, like I couldn't even feel the magic in life anymore,
Yeah. Oh, I know. I have fleeting moments of that, throughout the day, or something gets too stressful, you're like, why am I even going through this? But then as long as you ask those questions, you will get your answers. If you don't ask and you just fester with those emotions and those feelings, that's when you start to take their
Well,
toll.
I think the dark night is even when you ask, you're not getting anything. I think that's why it's called the dark night. It's like you just don't.
There's no. Yeah.
It's a very
guiding
strange
light.
Yeah, there's a strange thing. So the typical things that you would do that help raise your vibration and help you get where you need to be, your everyday stuff your everyday maintenance stuff like meditation and, if there's certain things that make you feel good, your regular program just doesn't work. And so it's a distortion that happens that I really would like to understand a little bit more. Because I think that.
Well, have you heard of the hero's journey?
Well, I've heard. Go ahead.
It's like there's a graph for it, but it's a circle, and it talks about the hero's journey. So basically how a lot of our movies are written and a lot of our books are written when they're based off of what is eventually the hero of the story. Mm-hmm. There's always, the issue, and then they go through their steps to where finally they are so deep and so low that everything feels lost and you're hopeless. But then something happens where the hero steps up and was like, I now have to take responsibility for everything that I have created. Mm-hmm. and now I'm going to move forward and become, essentially your own hero, or the hero of the story, or whatever you want to call it. But it's a very common theme throughout a lot of our stories that we grew up with, through the movies that we watch. So anytime, you see like the climax of the story, that's usually the darkest moment, and then comes the light.
Right.
So yes, it's a very common theme that we are just now starting to, I think, identify as, oh, it's not just in stories. This actually happens to
Right. Right. So when we're processing these things and we're going, like, I talk about these different levels of expansion that we experience, we get to these certain levels where we like have that identifying factor of like the hero's journey. Or for me, some of the things that and what happens is the expansion happens, and what happens is we kind of take it on as an identity, and then we release. We take it on, something happens, we have this epiphany, we take it on as an identity, we release. And I think that's maybe the ebb and flow that you might feel sometimes without realizing that's what it is. But I think about the levels that I've experienced, and part of it, so I would learn some information. For example, I had some sort of connection to like the planet Venus, okay, or Archangel Michael. And I wanted to take those on like as an identity, like it made me who I was, or I was somehow important, or I belong somewhere. And I kept reaching out for more information on these topics, and I wanted to go into meditation and get more of the story, understand who I was and where I came from. But eventually what I was finally realized was that I've been all things. I am all things. And that I had to release that. But it took me to realize that I was a piece of something, and I have this identity. I took these things on as identity. You have to take it on to be able to release it. These steps are very important, like the hero's journey. You have to have that epiphany moment and hold on to it. It's almost like the rubber band, like the expansion. You just can't go from here to here. It's like this flower blooming almost, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so for me, I felt that feeling, that real heavy, dense feeling. And I was talking to Lisa and her daughter, and I mentioned that that I had been a heroin addict, that I used to be a heroin addict. And for some reason, I started like really beating myself up about that, because that's not who I was. I worded that so wrong. And then I started saying, why do words really matter? And I started giving myself a hard time about that. And then I started thinking about what was truth, like these identities. So when I would open up and find something, that would become my truth and my knowing. But as I would release it, my knowing, and it's not just belief, because we talked about this with Lisa Gawlis from Nation of Lights, and she said belief changes. Anybody can tell you something and you'll believe it. You can change beliefs, but knowing is knowing. And I would say in this world of reality and this construct and the whole game, as your perspective changes, your knowing changes. So your knowing changes, everything changes. And so that's what I was saying, that I'm realizing that Dolores Cannon, why she named her books Convoluted Universe, and why everything is paradoxical. Everything is, everything contradicts itself. It's the higher you go in these different perspectives, because, we're all about the light and the dark. But once you go high enough, source in that perspective, source views all of it as just data. It's all just information. It's not one or the other. There's no dualistic polarity, nothing.
Yes, it's creation, experience itself, and all the possibilities.
Right. So what the issue for me is that I don't know, where do I belong in that sometimes.
Well, that's I think where we hold both, and we have to understand that we hold both, and that's okay, because that's the kind of reality we were made, manifest into. This is a world of duality where there is both. And
right. And I'm all things, and we're all things, right? So if I see, this is where, when I see people like truthers who are wanting to, the cabal to be, we want to expose everything and everybody. Why? Are you willing to forgive? Are you willing to look at them and realize it's you?
Yes, I came across a post from one of my friends today that they were having a, what they called a Deadpool, and they were placing ridiculous bets. Of course, it was all in humor on who they thought was going to die and how they were going to die and how much money they're putting to bet on that. And they're all, the people who people would generally like to see locked up, or they're not outstanding citizens of society, so they think that they should die. That blew my mind. Like, I don't know. There's definitely a polarity going on to where you have people who want to see the goodness in the world, and then you have people who, I don't know, I guess maybe it's just because they're not awake enough to the realities of what we really are. Mm-hmm. But, it just disgusted me, in all honesty, mm-hmm. and that maybe that was part of the energies of today. Today has not been an easy day for me. I'll just go ahead and put that out there right now. But it was just disgusting to me. And because the knowing that we literally are all connected, and mm-hmm. what is that doing to the collective? Mm-hmm. It's not helping the collective.
Right. Right. We don't need it. I mean, we don't need to have that. I mean, when last year, a couple years ago, I started doing that navigating the new paradigm with a couple, and they were really big into the government and all those things, and they were a lot older than me, and I was really starting to realize that I was creating my own reality. I really am we really are creating our own realities, these smaller realities, and then we have bigger realities that come together with an agreement, and then the bigger, whole. And the one guy that I was doing these webinars with said, well, we've played with it and we just really don't believe it. And not with judgment, but with just complete observation. Because when I am looking at the polarity of things and I remove judgment, that gets us to the perspective of source, where it is just experience, right? Just like I experienced heroin addiction. That's not who I am. That's just an experience that I had. And I only used heroin for like a month. I just want to add that out there.
But even after one time, it's...
Right, that's the point. It doesn't matter. It's just an experience. So I would look at them, and just from observation, I would see why, just like what happened with me these last couple days, why they were playing with it, why it didn't work for them, because they weren't willing to go deep enough within themselves to make these corrections where there's resentment, where there's, I got to get comfortable in my own body. And this humanness that we're experiencing, I'm constantly working through judgment and conditions.
Yes, I mean, my whole disgusting comment was a judgment on my half. We're all always working through those things.
Right. And that's what caused me to have this dark night. And so when I look at people like that who completely think that they're, not creating my own reality because we've worked with it, but they're not willing to look deeper. And this is what I feel for me is my whole, my driving force has been, I want all those things off of me. I want all of those, I understand its experience and its data, but I don't prefer that experience. I want to be clean of all of it. Yeah. If I have something and I don't look at it as wrong, I don't judge myself really. I look at it as something that I need to tweak and fix. And Lisa gets on me, don't say correct, because then you're implying that there's something wrong. For me, it's wrong. It's not what I prefer.
It's not aligned.
Exactly, alignment. That's perfect. Because when I am in alignment, I literally can feel my body, and I've talked about this before, where I could feel when I'm in alignment, there's this popping action that happens, and I can feel myself pull forward, like in alignment with this flow, this like, it's like resistance bust free, and I'm right on the path of what I'm supposed to be like in this reality. If you could look at it like energetically, like something moving on a track, and then there's stuff in the way, and then everything moves out of the way, and then it slides along that track faster, you know, where it glides how it's supposed to be. That's what it feels like to me. It physically feels like that. So when I was realigning these things like resentment and really starting to process, once I figured out what it was, and I was starting to process those things and clear them, then I got into alignment. And but I will take every given opportunity to clear that out. I'm grateful for this last couple of days, because I feel where it took me that much further. It expanded me. And I'm always wondering, how can I get expansion? How can I grow more? How can I grow more, right? And I know I'm not supposed to do this either. That this is seeking, which I'm not really seeking. I'm doing it for myself. But I want to go somewhere. And for me, going somewhere is clearing the stuff out so that I can reach. It's not about reaching the next level, but it is about reaching the next level.
Well, I feel there's, I don't know, at least in me, and I'm sure in a lot of the awakening and the awakened group, who the reason that we have been triggered into an awakening is because it is time. And it's like the whole reason that we came here, essentially. And it's almost like the drive, once you awaken, it's like you don't go back to sleep, because the drive is there, because now you know what your potentials could be, and you know that you've been limiting yourself, and you know that I'm not, not to put the blame on yourself, but, like, it literally is something that you need to take responsibility for, and that nobody is going to do it for you. Mm-hmm. And nobody can do it for you, and nobody would probably have enough energy to do it for you, because it's something that you have to do yourself. And
well, energetically, it won't work.
Right.
Those are like keys and doors that you have to open yourself. Nobody else has the key to them.
Right. And so
they can activate you and raise your energy, but the second they walk away, if you go back into that feeling or that space, zoom right back down to where you were. It's just wasted energy. That's why all these activations and the things like the Reiki stuff.
I was getting ready to say.
I was waiting for you to have your moment. Did you have your epiphany yet?
Well, I kind of already have been feeling that way. Honestly, once I got Reiki, it was almost like,
it's just me.
Well, I kind of grew out of it very quickly, mm-hmm. and I didn't get attuned the way normal people would get attuned. I got attuned very quickly to the master level, mm-hmm. within, like, I would say 3 to 4 months from my first attunement. And it was very, like, here, have all this energy and all of this, Okay,
but you already had that energy.
Right. Well, you know what I'm saying.
Right.
I'm getting there. So it was like, all right, yeah, this is who I am. Like what you were saying, you take on this identity. But then it was like, I almost feel, like it really just comes down to your intention and what, and the reason we Reiki infuse our things is because people like that. Mm-hmm. They mm-hmm. like to have the energies. You can do it yourself, mm-hmm. But it's definitely, I grew out of that a while ago, but we still use it.
Mm-hmm. Well, and not to say that things don't carry energy. Like the stuff you make is infused with your energy, right? And so if I'm already like right on that tipping, and I need something that my intention is
right
for this, you know what I mean? And it's that's already positive, and right, and then permission slips, exactly. But you touched on something there, intention. When I was processing all this stuff and all the other dark nights that I've had, intention was always key. So even when I was talking about with Tevin, I had some resentment. Because, so we started the East Coast Mom, West Coast Son page and wanting to interview people and do different things. Lisa Gallus, she had that promotion where she was half off she would do a reading for any virgins. And I wanted to buy all my children, everybody, a reading, a session. Well, Tevin wouldn't do a session. And come to find out, he wouldn't do it because he doesn't believe in it. He thinks that you can take this stuff and twist it and turn it however you want. Well, then he clearly does not understand it. Well, in the meantime, I realized that my life had been unfolding for me to read as part of this part of my journey. What's going to happen next, I don't know, but that's this part. And so that means he doesn't believe in what I'm doing. And so, and I'm ready to, do other things. And I really just want to do so much more. And I had some resentment there because I felt like, so what I had to do was, what is my intention? What is my intention with these things? My intention is always about love. My intention is, what do I want for him? I want him to be happy and be in this place. And what do I want for people when we do the East Coast Mom, West Coast Son? I want for people to awaken and find the tools that they need to, take them to the next level, to expand. What are my intentions? They're always, and if I get back to what my real intention is, which is almost always love-based, because that's just, I must just not have that major polarity, because I've really worked hard to clear out any darkness. And they say that we're both, but if it's there, I'm willing to shine a light on it and get rid of it.
Well, okay, so you just said it's there, right?
Mm-hmm.
We are working on shining our light on it to, I think, not necessarily get rid of it, but to heal it, to integrate it, to tell the ego that it's okay,
mm-hmm.
Because it comes down to the ego too,
it's going to evolve tricky balance.
Yes, it is. And because your ego is always there and always will be to a degree, I think that there is definitely, you will reach a point where your ego isn't easily offended because your higher aspects of self that understand where the other person is coming from and why they're doing what they're doing has grown. That muscle's there to have compassion for the person who's having a hard time and coming at you, whereas 2 years ago you might have been like, well, why are you coming at me?
Right.
So I definitely think that it got to be, we've been in a duality world for eons. The earth is ascending, we are ascending. With that comes the integration of the ego and the duality of it all. Mm-hmm. So then we are able to move up to that other level, that new level where the duality really isn't there. Mm-hmm. So it's an evolvement. So yes, a lot of people still have a lot of this polarity going on within them, but through the self-awareness process and healing and going within and asking questions and always trying to figure out, why am I responding this way, or why am I reacting this way, or how can I do this better, and always working on yourself, then we will always be forever moving closer and growing, even if it doesn't feel like we are at the moment. Mm-hmm. That's still part of the growth process, because
even
that still
is
processing.
Right.
Why do I feel like this?
Right. Yeah. The ego just is, when I look at the ego, and I do see how far I've come, and I see how far you've come, and that we've all come, because gosh, I remember like 3 years ago when we first met, like how far we've all grown. And it is about shining the light. But then as we start to expand, integrating that part, our ego is just about survival. And it gets to a place where the ego is almost maturing as we it's like when we first start this process, the ego's 5, and I'm 30, right? But the more we heal and we do all the things that you said, that it's like the ego starts to mature. It never quite gets to the age that we are. It's always falling behind a couple years, but it's integrated. It is all about integration. And what do we do with I've been accused of just, if you don't look at it, doesn't mean it doesn't exist, and I say that if there's things in this world that you are called to, that you want to work on, that you're actually going to make a difference in, and you have answers to, go have at it. Like me with the addiction thing. I felt like I wanted to expose the addiction community to a lot of metaphysical programs and things like that, because that's what worked for me. But if you're not going to have any effect on it, what you're doing is feeding it by paying attention to it. What will happen if we stop paying attention? Just like this whole Hawaii thing. That whether there was a missile or no missile or whatever, there was a lot of fear. And what did it cause? It's like this ripple effect. So,
I think that too is part of the ongoing struggle, of the light and the dark,
mm-hmm.
Of the maintaining the status quo versus the collective urge to move forward and beyond all of this. I think there's a growing number of people who are ready for all of this to just, be done with already,
or go our separate ways, like the splitting of the,
splitting, right.
Because from Source's perspective, the dark is not good or bad. It's just data, and the light isn't. So there's no winning, there's no losing. No, one's not right, one's not wrong. It's all about what do you prefer. But there's a feeding system. And when I think about even light, I prefer light and I want more and more of it. And if somebody prefers dark and they want more and more of that, if you remove judgment, that's their choice. And so how do we work in this world where there's two, right? In the dualistic world? What is and then I know that it's just being in the construct and it's just about the experience and it's just data. But that doesn't help me when,
because you're still human and experiencing these
exactly.
things.
And, and that's also me shining the light on my humanness, wanting answers. And then being able,
I totally agree with that.
Okay, so when we got bumped off, you were saying, what were you saying?
Well, you had mentioned something about the truther movement.
Mm-hmm.
And I find myself drawn to that.
Mm-hmm.
For whatever reason. I don't know if it's the warrior in me that wants to, see an end to all of this for
mm-hmm.
humanity's, freedom. But I'm conflicted within myself for wanting to even dabble into that because I know better, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it's like, okay, well, I still feel like I need to be helping in some way.
Right.
But at the same time, I don't share a lot of the stuff that is talked about or that people say you need to share. I might share
mm-hmm.
a couple of things here and there, and I usually end up deleting it because that's the conflict within myself. I do it. That part's me like, yeah, share it. And then I'm like, oh wait, you don't want to be spreading that kind of energy.
Right.
So then I delete it. And so it's this constant ebb and flow
mm-hmm.
of whatever is going on inside of me, and it can be confusing for me. But I think that's the one area that I can. There's probably plenty, but that's the one area that's standing out right now for me, especially with the fake news awards supposedly happening today and all these supposed meme wars that are going on and all that stuff. I believe the intentions of the people is generally for a greater good. But at the same time, a lot of what they are doing is very destructive.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very conflicting for me because
I understand exactly what you mean because I have struggled with the same thing in a different way. I want to understand how everything works and I want to undo everything and fix it and make it all, perfect. And what can I do to get myself in this perfect balance? And so can I just be? Can I, and so it's that drive, it's that human drive. And so where yours is your want to discover and educate and know what's going on. And mine is this push for understanding how everything works, how energy works. I want to understand why the dark night works, how this works, how this works, how this works, how this works. Because I asked Lisa about the energy when these energies were coming in these waves of awakening. What is the energy? Where is it coming from? Because if we're in a construct, where is it coming from? And she said, well, you don't worry about where the electricity in your wall comes from. Yes, I do. I want to know where that electricity comes from. I want to know how it works.
Yeah,
and so
kind of, you know,
well,
like.
And there's a reason why, and because when I start taking pieces apart, I start seeing the smaller pieces of a bigger piece. So if you look at, have you ever seen current go down a line? It moves just like we move through the solar system. Do you ever see the planets where they show all the ellipticals around, right? That, or where it shows.
You mean like the
how we orbit the sun and the
right.
around the sun and stuff like that, right? That is how our energy fields work. When I see things, when I'm doing readings, that's what it looks like. So all these things replicate themselves, and I'm very, very interested in that. And I have this drive. I got to figure it out. I got to figure it out. So I understand exactly. There's something to be learned from both of these things. There's this drive that we just settle back into being human and just be, or do we chase that? Sorry, I have no idea who's calling me. I'm rejecting that.
We're live, darn it.
People just don't call me randomly for no reason. You're the most important people I'm already have with me. But I don't know who that was. So they got rejected.
That's a good day. But yeah, I feel like I definitely would rather be the observer and not be so emotionally involved in what's going on. But then I also find that myself, you know, like, because we talk about engaging your energy. Well, I'm still engaging my energy even though I'm not sharing everything that they're sharing. You know, I still spend my time. Right. Yeah. And, you know, I don't know, I would like to, it's hard to express in words. I would like to get to a point where I am just always the observer, I guess you could say, and the master of myself and what I feel, what I experience, and have it be, I know it's all my creation, but have myself own that it's all my creation. Take full responsibility. And you know, we're working there, we're getting there, but you know.
Well, yeah, I've experienced that in small increments. I have not experienced it in small, you know, big waves yet. I've experienced it for like a couple of days at a time, and then I fall out of sync.
And what's funny is after your reading that we had, me and Ivan and you, we had the back-to-back readings. We were like amazing for like 2 days, like what you said, and then it just kind of fell off. And you know, so you do raise people's vibrations, just to let you know.
Oh, yay! Well,
but you know, it's also
the
on our
information does it too, right? Because that information really touches something in you, and it's your higher self communicating. It's your soul communicating directly to you. So that is going to move something in you. But it's keeping it. You know, what do you have to do to keep it going?
I think becoming unconscious of it and going throughout the motions of the day kind of separates you a little bit from that. So I almost feel like, okay, it's something that you have to be consciously working at all the time in order to maintain, which can be exhausting sometimes, especially when you have the mundane things that you have to tend to throughout your day. And, you know, we can't always be in this high spiritual place all the time and expect to get our humanly responsibilities done, you know. And maybe soon there will be that point where we can do all of those things and still maintain our connection to our higher self.
Right.
I mean, it's there, we're integrating, but consciously being aware of it and allowing the higher self to take the driver's seat, you know, sometimes that's...
They say they're way better drivers than we are.
Yes, they are. And you can tell the difference when they're driving and when you're driving, when your
Right.
ego is driving.
Right. Yeah. It's also tricky knowing when you're integrating and what you're integrating and if you're doing it properly, and when you're moving in the right direction, in the right space, in the right vibration, and all those things. Yeah, I've experienced the observer a couple times during very traumatic moments. When Ella was life flighted to medevac to the hospital in Akron, it was about a little over an hour, and it was in the middle of a snowstorm, so we had to go up after her. And while she was in the hospital for almost 2 weeks, I was able to experience it like I was riding a roller coaster. It was like I was able to experience it without being emotionally invested. That emotional investment that we have with things, that does something that takes us really out of the observer. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with emotions, because I think that that's what makes us human, are these deep, deep emotions that we have. Can we experience them and let them go? At the same time, ride this roller coaster while we're in this awareness and observation mode. It is quite the dance. It's very intricate, and you have to have perfect balance.
And nobody got lessons.
Nobody got lessons. None of us, not one of us. And so that brings me to my next question. And this is what I was starting to talk about, was about that knowing, how that knowing changes. Because that's really huge for me. I think that I get to this place where I know that this is the correct information. And then I will expand beyond that and see it from a different perspective. Now, it's true from the other perspective, and it's true from this perspective. They contradict each other. How do you live in a world like that? How do you know what I mean? This is struggling.
Or like I recall one of the Bashar videos, he said, all truths are true. Somebody asked,
right,
what is the greatest truth? And he said, well, all truths are true.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what the hell?
Right,
like, okay, well, then why am I arguing with somebody over their truth? Because if my truth is true for me and their truth is true for them, why are we arguing if all truths are true? Because we create our own realities, and we may be living next to each other essentially, but your reality looks nothing like mine, even though things may look similar, and we can agree that blue is blue and red is red and yada yada yada.
Sometimes not even that. Sometimes that's not even the case. Yeah, I found that out. That we're not actually experiencing the same reality that we think we are.
Right. So for somebody who's that's where the truther thing is a thin line for me, because I don't want to go down the hole of that being my reality, but I'm essentially making it my reality because that is what I'm choosing to put my energy towards. So therefore, that is what is real in my reality. Now, somebody who's not involved, and I know somebody who's not involved, they're not aware of any of the things that I'm aware of. So does that mean it's not true for them?
Mm-hmm. The problem with the truther movement is that everything is based on perspective.
Yes.
And so when you change just like what I said, they contradict each other. So when you take a different perspective, a different view of things, a more expanded view, like the source thing, it makes it okay. So look at just what we do with animals, to eat animals, or even eating plants. Many different perspectives. From our perspective, we need that to survive, or we think we do, right? But there's another perspective that we don't. So it depends on the perspective, or like the abduction perspective. We feel like victims, but do we have contracts, unknown contracts, or are we serving a higher purpose where we're saving races, or our DNA is helping with something else, a higher good? So from a mouse's perspective, the world, an ant's perspective, the world looks so different than from a human's perspective. And then as we go higher, that perspective changes. And so that's why there can be no truth when it comes to that, or not. There's definitely not one truth. That's for sure. That's why the Truther movement, I think it's something just like all the other things. I think they're permission slips, and I think it's a way to expand. I did the truther stuff. I did the conspiracy stuff, and I was all in, and I went down some crazy rabbit holes. It was very fun, and you feel so smart.
Maybe that's what it is. It's the thrill, the draw,
It is.
The mystery,
It is.
Because
It's got a whole bunch of stuff that comes with it.
Well, yeah, because, you spend your whole life being told one thing, and then you find out, okay, well, that wasn't real, or that wasn't the truth. It's been twisted or whatever. Then it takes you down holes that you probably really shouldn't be going down and probably don't really want to be there, but you're there. And now you're learning all these things. Okay, well, what is that doing to me? Is that desensitizing me? Or am I becoming better because of it? What am I going to be doing with that information?
That's when I got to the place where what it was doing was it was creating more judgment in my life. It was creating more polarity, way more polarity. And what was any of that information doing for me in my big picture reality?
How is it serving you?
Exactly.
And that's where I'm at right now.
And so I had to basically detox myself from it. I had to unsubscribe to all the sites. I had to go
I
had to unfriend people. I had to stop doing. And I felt like I had just left my hanging out buddies where we were drinking all the time and hanging out, like partying, my party friends. I had to get rid of all my party friends, all my truther friends, and start like really working on me, because then I realized, and I knew it, I would say, everything starts in the beginning. Be the change you want to see in the world. Everything starts, you're reflecting your reality from the inside. And I was playing with things already where I would pay attention to my intention on something. I would make sure I was in the right alignment, and I would see my reality reflect that. Almost immediately I would see it change. So I knew that there was and I experienced it today. Once I got to this expanded place, and all of a sudden I realized I started to not feel good. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this isn't me not feeling good. This is me expanding, and I'm reacting to it and causing myself to have a panic attack. I realized that I was so hyper aware, and I kept thinking there was something wrong. And I said, what if there's something right? What if this is me expanding? And let's just say that it's not, and I'm going to die. So what? I don't have any control over that. And once I released that, it stopped. And I felt so much better. It was like I just had like this big wave of, but I literally was having an anxiety attack because I thought there was something wrong. And see how just changing your mindset to saying, you know what, I'm creating this and there's nothing wrong. This is actually right. What if me feeling like this is me expanding? Not that there's something wrong.
Yeah.
So I started experiencing those things in reality. And that's when I realized that all this other stuff is a distraction. It's all part of the play.
Yeah.
It doesn't affect me in any way.
Because you're no longer focusing on your growth, you're focusing on everything else.
Right.
And what do you prefer? Well, do you prefer sitting in front of a computer, arguing with people all day about whose truth is true, if all truths are true? Or do you get down to the nitty gritty and iron out the wrinkles within you that you would like to see ironed out, flattened out, and made right again?
Right.
Aligned.
And when you do that, you'll start to see a real reflection on your reality. You'll see the system, and you'll see the system like self-correct. But I really do. The more and more that I break it down, to me, I look at it as a computer system. It's like a video game, because the way I see it respond, and the way that I see, like we talked about the astrological chart that you come in on is almost like pre-programming to set you up for certain things. And the more that I look at it, it really just seems like data. And when I put the right data in, then the program corrects itself. Like literally like putting computer data in and having a virtual reality correct itself.
Well, and the system will always let you know when there's something that needs to be corrected or aligned, because you will feel something.
Right.
Whether that's
if you're aware of it.
Well, that's true. Well, I mean, you still feel it, but you may not be aware of it.
Right. But the other thing is that like what happened to me today is I felt like there was something wrong. But if I'm creating it, what if there's something right? And if I feel like there's something wrong, it's because I've been programmed to think that there's something wrong. Like the foods that I eat are going to make me sick. Eating cookies all day are going to make me be a diabetic, right? And so what if I can make these cookies be the best thing my body could ever have? You know, I could eat cookies all day. Am I that powerful? Am I even capable? And you know, and I know I am, but there's all these other programming pieces that I really have to get rid of that are subconsciously there.
When we struggle with that in our family, because both of our kids are what you would call quote unquote picky eaters. And Ivan and I were heavily involved in like the March Against Monsanto years ago, and you know, all the GMOs and and we talked to Lisa, and she was like, look, it's almost like when you put labels on things like that and you make them bad, then they can become bad. Not you know, that's how everything essentially can work. It's the program. It's granted, you know, people want to, maybe the intention of exposing these things was to help people, but at the same time, it's like the opposite of the program. The program of creating a genetically modified organism, and then the program of telling you that it's harmful for you, and then you believe both of the, you know, you believe that that's harmful for you, then it has the power to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have the knowing that you are more powerful than that program, and you don't allow that, you don't, it's like you don't consent to that programming, therefore it doesn't affect you the same way it might affect your next door neighbor who's eating the same thing,
Mm-hmm.
you know? So
vibration has a lot to do with this too.
Yes,
so
absolutely, because the higher you are, those things vibrate at a low frequency, and when you're vibrating higher, they can affect you.
Right.
So our kids, you know, they don't eat always the healthiest foods, and my husband and I, we try to eat more, but it's a little more difficult for them because it really is like a tactile issue where they just cannot put it in their mouths because they will throw up. Mm-hmm. They have a very hard time trying new food, and that goes back to fear. And so we try to work with them with that, but we struggle with that as well. Like, how do you teach a child that it's okay to try new foods when they have it so ingrained in them that if they put that in their mouth, that is the worst possible thing that they could do. They can't even be in the same room with that food.
Mm-hmm. Or what about the parents that feel guilty when they're not giving their children healthy food? I know.
Or how about the person interviewing me who's calling me out?
I know, we're the whole thing we're creating. It's just all energy. It's like the March Against Monsanto, or so how I figured this out was Mother Teresa said that she would not invite her to an anti-war rally and she will not come, but invite her to a peace rally and she'll happily join you, right? And we could get down the whole rabbit hole about Mother Teresa and that whole thing, and if she even helped people. But the point is that even whether she said that or not, this is a reality for the universe. The universe does not understand negation. So in our reality, anti-war is the same as war.
Because they removed the anti.
Exactly. So peace. And so when we're creating these things, it's about being very careful about the energy. Like the March Against Monsanto, the energy of that whole thing was so out of whack and angry, and
oh yeah,
you're feeding it. So that's where the difference is. Can we take things and create something completely new and healthy and in this pure energy. And that's what the whole point of what we're trying to do now is disintegrate and wipe away all the old, because we can't rebuild from what's already there. We literally have to do something completely new.
Yeah, because we can't keep doing the same old things and expecting different outcomes.
Right, and it really just is an energetic thing.
Right.
Because once that energy has been established, we can't quite, you have to do something completely new. It has to be a new, or otherwise it just ends up being like the negation thing. The energy is already set in what that energy is. That's the way I understand it. But I mean, of course I could be wrong. We do it to ourselves. We change our vibration and our energy all the time. But the difference I would say is that we're source. But the source is everywhere and source is everything. So I don't know. This is what I'm talking about, how it goes in circles and it's convoluted and it just does. Where do you go with it? I don't even know where to go with it.
I know. It's a conundrum.
It is. It is.
It's very interesting to, when you are in that observer moment, to sit back and question, well, why am I even observing this?
The march against Monsanto. I'm sorry. We are live. It's not working on my computer, so I wanted to check it on my phone. I'm so sorry. Stop. I wanted to see if we were live because it's not showing on my computer. We are live. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That's okay. I don't even remember what I was saying.
We were talking about the energies and the conundrum of all of it. How it just.
Oh yeah. What I was saying was finding yourself in that observer moment, but then I don't know. I find myself asking myself like, well, why am I even observing it in the first place? Who is observing
Now
it?
you really sound like me. This is where I've been for the last couple of days. Like, what's the point?
I know, but then okay, well then you get back down to like, okay, well I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. So right. What are we got to do? What's next? You know, like okay.
Well, the said intention is for expansion, for our souls to expand,
our soul growth.
Right. For this experience to constantly feed data in. All of us are constantly feeding data to source, and source is knowing itself through all these things happening now. So to be part of that.
That's pretty cool.
It is pretty cool. But yeah, it does get to be like cumbersome and yeah, like and I felt like that, like would I prefer to just be back into that abyss of source, you know, but
it's like a suicidal thought without the
depression,
the heaviness of it.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, it is. It's and there's like this possible freeing feeling, but
is that the release of the fear of death?
I don't know what that is, but I know that that's from this perspective.
Right.
Now, if I was going to experience something from a different perspective, a higher perspective, would I feel that way?
Potentially not. Yeah.
You know, because when I think of the possibility of, so in Lisa's classes, we were doing ET connections, and my ET connection was a whole bunch of different races, basically telling me that I've been all these things. And one of them, crazy enough, were the Andromedans. Remember that picture that I showed you, that they're master shapeshifters? That came in my ET thing, and that they were showing me how to turn back into light from a human body. So later on, after our class, I'm doing my laundry and I'm like reflecting and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's ascension, which is what I started this journey with, was ascension. But not, and back then when I first started, ascension was going somewhere. There was like a final destination. Now to me, ascension is just shape-shifting and knowing that I'm actually capable of raising my vibration and being interdimensional and all these different things. That sounds fun. So if I could get to that where I'm taking these filters off, like Linda said earlier when we went live earlier, she said maybe you're just releasing all these filters. if I am releasing all these filters so that I can get to that place where I can shape shift and do all that stuff, it might be worth it then.
Well, I mean, I know I've had plenty of dreams that were as real to me as right now, where I was breathing underwater, I was flying, you know, and it just felt so easy and natural, and it was fun, you know, and to me, limitless. You know, I wasn't limited by having to only breathe air or stay on the ground. I could just go wherever I wanted to go and be. And that to me was amazing and fun. You know, it's like you don't even want to wake up when you're doing that, you know.
Right.
But are we capable of getting to that point? I think so. Absolutely. Yeah. You know, and I think it definitely has to do with vibration. Because, you know, when you're vibrating lower, I think you're more in survival mode. So your body and your limits are to that of survival, and you can't survive if you breathe underwater with that understanding, you know. So as we vibrate higher, we change our density, then our physiology changes, because our DNA reacts to our thoughts and our emotions and our awareness and understanding. All of that's connected quantumly, that we can literally change what we're made out of, what we're capable of, what we, you know, but it's like, okay, well, how do you know, like, if you're there or not, you know, like, because right now I know I can't breathe underwater, you know, but I can't lift off the ground yet, but so it's like, okay, well, how do you know where you're at? Is it important to know where you're at? Because then you could just let go of that concern and just be. You know, I find myself, honestly, throughout this whole conversation, coming to a lot of actualizations and realizations. and
most of it comes back to being releasing and just being and observing and just staying in awareness, and really enjoying the ride, enjoying even the things that seem mundane, finding the richness in those things, because again, it's about perspective, you know. So I mean, even in the drama of like Ella being sick, the experience of that, you know.
What happened, by the way? Was she?
Oh, this is okay. So last year she ended up getting RSV. She was only 2, so RSV is really terrible for toddlers, and she had pneumonia. But we just found out this year. See, this cycle would have repeated itself. I was anti-vax. Do you remember this? I was like and so I had taken one identity and went to another identity, and I had all this judgment. And so I wasn't taking her to the, well, anyways, it wasn't just necessarily me not taking her to the doctor, but they missed the asthma last year. And we didn't know she had asthma. Since she's been on this medication, the daily medication that she takes, a breathing treatment in the morning and in the evening, we have had no problems. Before, she used to get up every day and she'd have these dark circles under her eyes, and I kept feeling like, was she low in zinc or in iron? I was giving her multivitamins. I'm like trying to beef this kid up, giving her all these healthy foods, like, is she eating too many cookies? Us and our cookies. And here, she wasn't getting oxygen. She just wasn't getting oxygen. And so now her oxygen levels are at 99. She just had a test on Monday, and so she's doing really well there.
Well, we had a similar experience.
It was fear that kept me in that place. Once I faced that fear, then we found all these things out, and the cycle didn't repeat itself, because that's the game. I would have went through that again.
I wonder if that's partly kind of what happened to me without realizing it happened. And I wouldn't say it happened to me necessarily, it happened to us as a family, because Timmy, similar situation, he had a cold, you know, and I couldn't figure out, like, well, why isn't he getting better? We had antibiotics, and then I had just came home from the hospital with Ethan, our youngest at the time. So Timmy was about 3, and I had Ethan in the bed with me, and I had Timmy in the bed with me. Everybody was in the bed, and Ethan, once we brought him home, and it was probably like 3 to 4 weeks, and he still had like the watery eyes, and I'm like, he should be resolved with that by now. You know, I don't remember Timmy having it that long. Timmy's having an issue, having a cold and not getting better. So, okay, what the heck's going on? Well, I remember one night I woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning and Timmy's damn near convulsing on the bed. How did I miss that? You know, like how can I be so blind as to not see he was having a problem breathing, going all the time? You know, I didn't have asthma. I do now, but I didn't then. And it's like, okay, well, I just didn't know what the symptoms were.
Right.
And so, you know, we went to the hospital. He was on breathing treatment after breathing treatment, steroids, oxygen for like 6 hours. His blood oxygen level was 85. You know, so he was, if I didn't wake up, maybe he wouldn't have woken up. You know, so that was really hard for me at that point, and I felt like a horrible mother. But you know, it took another asthma attack and him going into the hospital. Actually, it took 2 more before they were finally like, well, he probably has asthma. So then I got the nebulizer, then I got all the meds and all the anti-inflammatory for their lungs and all that, and we did that religiously for a long time. I think now he's 8 now, so he's pretty much grown out of it. He'll have some flare-ups sometimes if he's running around too much. You can hear him like, you know, where it's starting to constrict. But now my youngest is starting to do it. But we're not messing around this time. We go right into the nebulizer and all that stuff. And he never had any flare-ups that made us go to the hospital. So, you know, it is probably a learning process that once you learn, you don't have to repeat. But then too, I have to understand, because I was also very, you know, anti-pharmaceutical, I guess you could call it. But in reality, those things do help, you know. And if you're going to have the connotation of, no, this is going to hurt me if I take this because it's made by the pharmaceutical companies, how could it possibly be helping me? Well, then, yeah.
It's going to hurt you.
Right.
Right.
So it's like, okay, well.
This is kind of what we're talking about even with in our own lives. It's this balance between these things, right? Is that all these things are here for us to use to be beneficial if we'll allow it to be there, to allow us to use it to be beneficial. But also in my awakening with the conspiracy stuff, I went with Big Pharma, public schools, you know, all the main top things. And so when Lauren was in kindergarten, I was just awakening, and I hadn't quite gotten into the conspiracy stuff yet. And I loved the school system. And I had nothing but positive experiences. I started along the way, not necessarily Lauren's school, but just public schools, having that view of public schools that they were somehow bad. You know, my kids aren't going to get the education they need. They're, you know, all the different things that we say about the public school system. And I started having bad experiences. And I realized, is it me? And so somebody asked, well, what don't you like? And I said this, this, and this. And I said the word hate, which I don't hate anything. But I just said the word. And it was all programming. It was all programming. I'd never experienced those things, but it was things that I heard, that I read, that I had now created in my reality, right? So I changed my thinking and am now in that place where I love the school system. And since then, I have not had a negative thing happen. So I'm telling you, when I say that we're creating it all, we are creating it all. I mean, really just changing it at a deep level. That's the hard part. You could say you're changing something, but you're really not.
Then you can also start to change something and then stop. And then you can also, you know, change it up to a point. And then wonder, well, like that one couple, you know, like, well, we tried it, but it didn't work. Well, did you go far enough?
Right.
Did you get to the root, you know, and sometimes finding the root of what your beliefs are and why they're that way is difficult. And
well, sometimes it's multi-layered too.
That's what I was going to say. Like, there may be other things that you need to kind of shed off before you can get to the root.
Right.
Yeah. So, but I know that, you know, every time that we shed something, there's going to be something new that comes up to shed.
Yes.
You don't get a break anymore.
Well, not anymore. It's pretty, well, I guess it's all depends on what your goal is.
Yeah.
Because if that's what your goal is to get to that place, you do want to shed it. That's how I feel. I'm always like, get it off of me. I want it off.
Almost immediately when it happens.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, part of that process is being quiet and not engaging in whatever, let's say for instance, an argument with my husband, because that was the theme for today. And it was, well, why can't you sit here and talk to me? Why do you have to close down and be quiet? Well, for me, I have to stop the intake of all of these stimuli in order to be clear. Mm-hmm. And to be able to really think about what I'm going to say, really process what I'm trying to say, instead of just spewing it out because that's what you want me to do. That's what you're doing.
Right.
You know, so it's like, okay, trying to come back to that quiet place more often, and knowing that that's okay for me to do that.
It's okay for everybody. I would,
allowed to do that.
One of the things me and Ian wants to do in the future, one of these things that we're going to manifest this, is we want to have a couples retreat, like that place we went to, that Inn at Honey Run, something like that, with like cabins or a place like that, but a couples retreat. And that's one of the things that we've always practiced, is we never, if we have something we don't agree on, we never do it then. We don't talk about it. We know we both go our separate ways. We let time lapse. We have time to think about it, each of us on our own. And then we come back and communicate to each other about, where we are, because that's dealing with a place from the ego right there. You're not really thinking clearly. You're not really feeling. You want to make sure that what you're saying is really what you feel, and 100%. You're not just going to say things off the cuff. I mean, you want to have some deep communication. You can never do that from that immediate place, and especially a place of anger or any of those emotions. So
right.
You have some time to go your separate ways and kind of do your own thing. And then me and Ian don't fight. We never really have. Even when we were really unhealthy, we didn't. We had our little, we would get kind of agitated with each other, but that's something we've always done, is just went and then always came back. So we learned from that. So I think that is a great approach, and I would actually suggest that Ivan maybe practice doing that himself.
Well, we're working on it. When after I took that time, I wasn't granted that time necessarily. Not to talk bad about him, of course, because we're all learning.
We're all growing, right? I mean, that's
and I frequently just how I am. I always see things on both sides immediately. Mm-hmm. So it's frustrating sometimes for me when others don't. And I have to just keep that in my perspective, that it's not like that for everybody. And that sometimes when I say something, it might come off as abrasive because I'm seeing it from the other side, but they're taking it like it's and this isn't just Ivan, this is a lot, people I've had just regular interactions with that we've had disagreements with. They take it as a personal attack. They take it as, well, you're talking down to me. You're telling me what I need to do differently. Well, no, I'm actually seeing it from your perspective because I feel you, mm-hmm. because I can feel what you're feeling, and I can see that other side of that perspective. Mm-hmm. And I know that if I engage with you, then I am not honoring that side of me, you know. So once I had that moment to myself, a lot of the things that I was thinking at that moment when we were going through that, it's not what I ended up saying to him at the end. And we did talk, and it's also like a, killing of the old habits. Old habits die hard, mm-hmm. So people, when you say that you want to change something about yourself and then you aren't able to do it immediately and you get pointed out on it, well, you said you were going to stop doing this. Well, whoa, I am desperately fighting myself to stop doing what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. But here I'm just reacting, so right. I need to have that time right. to give myself the opportunity to not do that anymore.
Right. And we have to understand that we're all on our own journeys. So
Right.
even though we're couples, like you and Ivan and me and Ian, Ian's on his own journey, and we'll have these talk conversations where we're going to talk about things that we're going to change, and one of us may not do that. I think that it would be awful for us to point out each other's weaknesses to each other. We are well aware of where our weaknesses are. We need to support each other and help each other be each other's strengths, not point out each other's weaknesses. Because anytime that we've ever had an interaction where something we don't take the time, it's always the reactions are always done out of insecurities, an insecurity that's triggered in me or an insecurity that's triggered in him. So, and then it's baseline the same stuff that he learned from childhood, and it baseline
That's where it comes from.
I learned from childhood, right?
That's where it comes from.
Right, exactly. And that's how it is for all of us. These are the filters that I'm talking about that we put on. And so we need to really respect and honor those spaces, and so that we can work through those things and be supportive for each other instead of our biggest, person that's going to tear us down. Or, we need to be advocates for each other rather than the proponent, what's the word I'm looking for? Somebody that just really doesn't support somebody.
I know what you're trying to say.
Okay.
But, and the tricky part, I feel, is that we are both fully aware of that. But it's almost like we aren't driving when it happens.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's that ego trying to protect itself. And, it goes back to the survival. I have to stand up for myself. I have to say what I feel is right. I have to be right. Darn it.
Yeah.
And it is a lot
It takes a couple times and you'll stop doing it. It really does.
Well, and I think too that what might be, I don't know how to say it. I guess what might be beneficial, at least on our end, is how do you remove, you can't remove somebody's ego for them to help them see what you're seeing,
Mm-hmm.
what you understand. You can't do that for them, So it's like,
you have to support them no matter what choice they make. You have
even
to,
if you don't agree with it.
even if you don't agree. And that's your exercise, is being in that space of not agreeing and not reacting. So Ian several times has made, and he's seen me do it too, right? He saw me do it before I started this path. And he let me just kind of, and try to just be supportive. Once I started this, I was seeing him do things. Of course, that's how it usually is, right? We see so much then.
The reflection.
Yeah. And it was like stuff with work, and he was like hanging around some other people that weren't really bringing out the best in him. And I didn't say anything. I just kind of let him find his way through. I just was really supportive. He always figured it out on his own. Always stopped it on. I never had to say anything, because it's the reflection, because I'm creating what is going on inside of me. So the more I honored that, and the more I was, doing that, reflecting that out, and really cleaning myself out, he had to see that too. And so so the more you stand in that sovereign, unconditional, loving, non-judgmental place, he will have no choice but to see it. And usually what happens is, if there aren't going to be some changes, they'll end up leaving. Not that, but that's not going to happen to
right.
you.
No, I don't feel like
Yeah.
it is. And I feel like we are, no matter what happens, and that's like our motto, is no matter what. Because we have literally been through so much together.
Mm-hmm.
And yet we still have like this awareness and understanding of the bigger picture.
Mm-hmm.
So the egoic things that we may do is forgiven.
Mm-hmm.
And we are able to look beyond that and not hold it against each other. There might be some like resentment that holds for a little bit, but it's not like it's going to determine whether or not we're going to stay together.
Right.
you know, because we are in this together and we've already made that promise to each other. And no matter what, you know, we are here to support each other and help each other, even though we have been guilty, you know, we are guilty of pointing out each other's faults.
Mm-hmm.
There's a song that just came out from a band that we really like, and it's called Go to War. And it talks about how we scream at the ones that we love because we feel like it's a safe place.
Right.
Why? Why is it like that? Why do we treat our neighbor or the stranger off the street better than we treat our family?
Right. Well, for most of us, that's been programmed into us since we've, you know, we repeat what we see. We repeat, I mean, gosh, from the time we're born until 7 or 8 years old, everything we do is repeated behavior. We're mirroring the adults around us for all those years. So it's a generational thing. So are we going to break that generation? I know I'm really working hard to break it.
I want to so bad, right. You know, like that's so, like one of my biggest change.
Well, this is the change that with the New Earth stuff. This is like us breaking these generational cycles with things like this. As the older generation dies off and we have these things broken, and our children how are now grown up without these types of programs, we see where that can really bring a change into a new society.
I think it's also difficult because, like, we had kids before we started waking up, and so the programming was already started. As far as, like, you know, what we were unaware of, what we were continuing on with our children that we had done with us, the tactics and the techniques, the manipulation and all that stuff. And it's interesting, to say the least, to have going through this awakening process while at the same time having children who are probably more aware than we are, but have also still been programmed to a degree. Mm-hmm. How do you unprogram, you know, a child who, I don't know, I guess I kind of feel the guilt of having programmed them when, you know, I that's just something I have to process, but, you know.
Okay, so it's almost like what we started with every truth is a truth, right? So in every choice that we make, you're always making the best choice you can make with the information you have.
Right.
Okay. So all those choices that you made were the best choices you could possibly make, and at that time with your truth. What you can do now is take your truth now and live that. And your children will learn through you.
Through mimic, through being the example. Yeah, be the change.
Exactly. Yep. Exactly. So there's nothing, you don't have to undo anything. You don't have to, you know, and certainly not carrying that guilt. You don't want them to see you carrying guilt either.
Right, right.
So yeah, just be the change.
And guilt is the lower vibration, and, you know.
Oh gosh, it's really low. I don't think it goes any lower than that. Guilt's pretty low on the scale. I actually found a sheet that I had done for one of my meetings, the big colored one with the inverted, you know. Yeah, and it's got, I think that's Hawkins or somebody. Oh, I wanted to show you before we go. So I got my business cards finally.
Yay.
Little business cards. You can barely see them. You can barely see the writing on there. And there's the back. But they sent me a T-shirt. And what they did was they made these little note cards. Look, this is actually from my website. They took the thing off my website and put my logo, like, see there's a little person standing there? It's really cool.
That is cool.
Yeah, and they sent me pens, which so I don't have to order. I don't have to figure it out because they figured it out for me. Little stickers for my cards. All kinds of little goodies in this promo box. So I'm ready to rock and roll, and I got to get my stuff out there. So, and so I was thinking that we'll do something. So like for anybody that orders from Iampevo, so let's get that plug in there real quick. So Margaret is, what is it? What is the website?
It is Iampevo.etsy.com.
Okay, and all kinds of goodies. All kinds of goodies. I was just going to say that Ian has a piece of organite that you guys made for him, a necklace, and he loves that thing. He forgot to wear it the one day to go to the store, and he said he could really feel things.
We get that a lot. We get that response. I need another one right now. Like my brother-in-law, he always has it in his pocket, and he broke it on accident.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like calling us, like, can you get here now and bring me another one? I feel so weird right now.
Right. Yeah, he said he felt the difference. And so the energy changes. I mean, gosh, when you become awake and aware of them, you really feel them. But so yeah, I am Pivo, all kinds of great stuff. And so I was going to send you some stuff, and maybe when you send out stuff, then you can send like my business card with like a coupon. And then I have weboftransformation.com, where I'm doing readings and like guidance, like soul guidance and stuff like that. And we can maybe do anybody that gets a session with me, like whatever you guys come up with, like a percentage off to purchase something, like a coupon to purchase something for my Iampevo. So we'll work that out if anybody's interested. Just put the little note there, and we'll
Absolutely.
So I guess it's time to wrap it up with our little delay in between there. And I don't even know if anybody's out there. If you are, I'm so sorry that I'm not being interactive. My computer's not working properly. Are there any questions? Can you see that? I don't know.
I don't see anything. I can't see anything. But I do want to say, even though there are those who are more along on the awakening path than others who may be just starting or who haven't started at all, there is no stopping. And as you can see, there's this constant processing that goes on. And just because you think that you've got something figured out, they'll throw you a curveball and they'll say, no, you don't.
It's the fun of it though, isn't it?
Exactly. It's all natural and normal, and don't feel, any less because you are also still learning.
Right.
And that's okay,
Well, what you learn today, you'll learn is obsolete tomorrow. Because it changes.
It's like changes. The iPads, you get the new one and then tomorrow it's no good.
Right. And also engaging in these conversations. So Margaret, having you on today with me is instrumental in my growth and my expansion. When we share,
as mine.
Yeah, I know it is. It is. Every time we do these interactions, I can feel myself, not to mention that we are social creatures and we need each other in a healthy way, a healthy, supportive way, not in a way that's, tearing each other down in a judgmental way. We need to lift each other up because you're me and I'm you. It doesn't make any sense to do it anyways. I want to bring out your attributes just like you want to bring out mine. And then we fit together like these perfect pieces of a puzzle.
Exactly.
So, thank you so much for spending time. I really appreciate it. I love you so much.
I love you, Charlotte. More than you know.